I used to think that alcohol unlocked the real me, that without it I was somehow less. Have you ever felt that way? Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Cams. I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to share with you today an anecdote that I was reminded of when I looked at the On This Day section on my Day 1 journal. I've been journaling since 1986 and I've been using Day 1 since about 2008. On this day, 18th of December 1991, I was a mature pupil at Ayr Academy. I had an accident when I was 17 while I was in the army, and I was still recovering from that accident. I was going through surgeries and rehabilitation. I was still on the army payroll, but I knew that I was going to be discharged. So I started applying to universities and soon discovered that I didn't have the qualifications required. So I had to go back to school and do my hires. So in 1991, I was studying Russian, English and history, and there was a girl in my English class that I kind of fancied. The school dance was coming up, the Christmas dance, and let's say I wasn't that keen on going to dances, but because Heather was going to be there, I thought, I'm going to go, this is a chance to ask her out. So I drank a quarter bottle of whiskey quite quickly before I went out to the party. And this is the incident that remains in my mind and has been on my mind ever since that day. I was drinking the whiskey, getting myself ready, looking at myself in the mirror, tying my tie and thinking to myself, this is the real me. I wish I could feel like this all the time. Have you ever felt that way? It made me feel like I fitted in, like I belonged in the world, and it got rid of that fear, the fear that I carry around with me every day. But as any alcoholic will tell you, the craving that kicks in after you have that first drink is almost impossible to ignore. And I don't actually remember what I did do. I'm almost certain that I will have taken with me more whiskey to the dance. And I do know that Heather didn't want to know. I know that because I wrote it in my journal. We did eventually go out on a date, the result of which was that we both had to go to court. But that's not what this video is about. I'll maybe give you that story in another video, so if you want to hear it, you know what to do. The point of this story is that idea of unlocking the real me is something I've looked back at many times over my continued drinking career and into my sobriety. And I now know that it's not true, but I do understand why I thought that way. It was such an amazing feeling from the very first time I ever picked up a drink to have that feeling of fear taken away. That's what made me want to continue drinking, because I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be a misfit. I didn't want to feel fear. I didn't want to hide away. The trouble is now that without alcohol or prescription pills, because that was a thing, how do I go about my day fitting in and feeling like I belong? Well, that's a really good question. The answer to that question continues to evolve, and I don't believe that I will ever get the answer, because I don't believe there is an answer. I believe there's a journey, and that journey for me began when I got into the rooms of AA. When I got to the rooms of AA, it started with a physical feeling of feeling better, because I wasn't putting alcohol into my system. And that led to the so-called honeymoon period, where I was feeling okay physically. And as I started to get better, what normally happened is what happened then as well. My brain started to tell me, okay, you're feeling all right now. It's probably about time to have a drink, right? And that's how my alcoholism would go. It would be a craving, a binge, a period of abstinence, a craving, a binge, a period of abstinence. And so when I started to feel better, the fear started to creep back in, and I would feel that urge to get drunk. And I didn't want to do that anymore. That's why I got to AA. I was beat. I was on my knees. I've shared about this before here. And so when I got to the rooms of AA, I learned how to listen. I started listening to other people sharing, and I learned really just to listen. That was the main thing, but I did actually begin talking from the very first meeting, not really understanding anything about myself, but just feeling that in this safe environment, I should be practicing and talking. And so I think I did that really from the first meeting that I went to, and it was that beginning of exploring the way that I tick, that just continued to make me feel better and better and better. So alcoholism itself is a progressive illness. Recovery is also progressive. You have to start at the beginning without any idea of how to do it or what it's going to do for you, and just keep showing up. So what I had there was, in Luxembourg, we had 3 meetings a week, and they would generally last for about 2 hours. So I had 6 hours a week of feeling safe, of being in an environment where I knew what I said wasn't going to go any further, and it gave me a place where I actually felt like the fear would leave me for 6 hours a week. And what I found was that when I came out of the meetings and drove home, that feeling of safety would stay with me for a little while. And the more I went to meetings and the more I did the steps, the longer that feeling of safety would stay with me. And sometimes it would stay into the next day. But it always left. It never stayed continuously. And that's how recovery is progressive and has to be practiced. I mean, if you look at step 12, it says we continue to practice these principles in all our affairs. That's how it goes. And so what I'm finding now is that if I don't practice these principles in all my affairs, that feeling of irritability and discomfort comes back into my life. And I don't notice it. I really don't. And even though I know that when I get to a meeting after a period of not having been at meetings, it suddenly dawns on me that I was actually in a state of discomfort and fear and irritability. I just didn't know it. And yet, when I stay away from meetings for a long time, if anyone asks if I'm okay, I'll say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't need the meetings. It's not until I get to a meeting again that I realise that I wasn't fine. So it's a strange thing. It's like telling myself when I'm up in the hills with the dogs that this is the best feeling in the world, and I try and remember that, but when I'm sitting in the house and it's dog walk time, I can tell myself, oh no, I can't be bothered with that. So trying to remember that feeling of joy up in the hills, it doesn't work when I'm down here. And it's the same thing when I'm irritable and discontent. Someone else has to tell me. It's usually my wife, and she'll say, Cams, I think you need to get to a meeting. Of course, now we're in COVID times, so there are no face-to-face meetings. There are Zoom meetings of my local group, and I did try them, but they weren't really working for me. I'm not sure why. It could be because there wasn't that safe place. I don't know. But that's why I've decided to start talking here, publicly, on my channel, which might seem like an insane thing to do, but it's really helping me. And in a very selfish way, it's helping me to get better by making content like this and posting publicly. And I know that it works by helping me, means that I will be helping others. It's a strange system, but I know that it works. Alcoholism is a selfish illness, and recovery has to be selfish too. If you're not going to AA, or if you're not trying to get sober for yourself, it's not going to work. And I know that because I tried it. First time I got to AA was in 2000 in Almaty, Kazakhstan, of all places. And I went then. I mean, I knew I was in trouble then. I knew pretty much that I was alcoholic, but it was at my girlfriend's behest. That's why I started going to meetings then. And it only lasted a month tops. And then it was another 5 years before I got into AA, but this time it was because I wanted to go. So far, I've never picked up a drink through complacency, but I know many other alcoholics who have. some of whom were sober for multiple years and then stopped going to meetings and picked up a drink. Now, I've gone through spells of not attending meetings for quite long periods of time, and always when I've gone back, I've thought to myself, I need to keep coming back. And that's what this is helping me to do. By sharing my story, by exploring my own thoughts through video format, it's really helping me to make myself feel better, and most importantly, to keep at the top of my mind the fact that sobriety is the number one priority in my life, because without sobriety in my life, I have nothing. Guitar is my passion. If I'm drunk, the guitars are going to go away. I have a beautiful family. If I get drunk, they're going to go away. Everything that's valuable in my life is there as a result of my being sober today. So I am sober today, and I'm very grateful for that. I intend to be sober tomorrow, and by making this content, I'm helping myself to do the best that I can to make sure that it stays that way. So I help me, which helps you, which helps me. It's a magical feedback loop of miracles. If you'd like to stay up to date with my content, the best way to do that is to subscribe to my channel, but you may also be interested in my newsletter. I'm publishing once a week, sending out a newsletter with a link to my latest video and a bit of text, a little bit of writing about how I'm feeling and what's going on in my life, and more importantly, what I'm doing to keep myself sober. So if you're interested in that, visit camscampbell.com. You'll find the links to all of my videos and all of my writing. Thanks for watching, and remember, you're not alone.